My name is Ken Brack, and my book, Especially for You, tells the stories of people who respond to catastrophic loss and trauma by finding a new purpose. It begins in my family's experience losing my 18-year-old son in a car crash, which began with a phone call in the middle of the night. We scrambled downstairs, making the phone calls to police, to the hospitals, and reached a state police barracks. And a sergeant eventually came on the line and it told us about one of the boys being airlifted and another whom they didn't know who he was. And he kind of sensed I was the one, I was the dad whose son was already gone. And I realized as the floor seemed to sink from my feet that our lives were never going to be the same. We were thrown into the rip, a current where you're reaching for anything, digging deep into the questions of how this happened. How could he have? How did God let this happen? Is there a God? The book is telling the story of people grappling with these questions who do some really extraordinary things. Or how do people do this? What does that take? Can it be beneficial for others to hear some of their stories, to be uplifted, to take a few things through their experience, through their voices, One of the stories in my book is about a family who responded to their daughter's heinous murder by trying to make things right or prevent another family from going through the same ordeal. I was driving to work one winter morning and had the news on, and the broadcast coming over the interview was Mrs. Connie Cleary, and Connie was recalling the day 25 years before when her daughter Jean was found murdered in her dormitory bed. And what Connie said next, I just felt I had to do something to prevent another family from going through the same hell. What Mrs. Cleary and her late husband did was to challenge colleges and hold them accountable to share their crime statistics, but really to make campuses safer for all of our children across the country. And their efforts led, it really cracked the door open for better treatment of sexual assault survivors on campuses. They transformed their pain while walking beside it. Coming into the 10th anniversary of 9/11, I had the chance to meet the brother of one of the first responders. Jay Winnick lost his brother Glenn, who was a volunteer firefighter. And amongst Glenn's friends and his family, they always knew Glenn had this penchant for being in the wrong place at the right time. Glenn was doing triage in the lobby of the South Tower when the tower fell. And what Jay and a friend of his, another native New Yorker, did was really extraordinary. Running with that expression of selflessness, that ethic, that spirit, whatever you call it, they eventually built an organization to encourage and facilitate what's called the September 11th Day of Service and Remembrance, a national day of remembrance to this country. The essence of the response was the reciprocity of giving, and that's what Jay and David ran with, and they continue it. In 2009, I was teaching at the time at a high school in Boston, and Nathan Alfin, a native of Krakow, Poland, visited the school, and what he essentially told the students was that he had survived the Holocaust because of blind luck and his hatred for the Nazis. And Nathan also had two surviving brothers. One of the brothers, the younger brother Bernard, began to face his trauma. One day he looked into the mirror and saw his tattoo from Birkenau, Auschwitz-Birkenau, and said, wait a minute, this is me, this is who I am. It's not the life I'm living. I've been stuffing down my fears and my pain inside of me. I know one of my brothers says his trauma is stored in my head. Mine's stored in my bones, deep within my body, and I've got to learn how to face it directly. So he went about his own kind of course of healing and actually began to lead tours of the former ghetto in Poland and also to Auschwitz, emotionally venting and describing to people the process of him to face the trauma there. He may be the only survivor from Auschwitz in the world who leads tours like that. 6 years after losing Mike, in 2008, while I was meeting many people for my book, my wife Denise acted on a vision. Could we create a healing place for other grieving families to support them, among others, walking a similar road? We did. Hope Floats is a bereavement center that continues to do this incredible work. It is the work of our lives.
Little darling, the smiles are returning to the faces. Little darling, it seems like years since they've been there. Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.